Welcome to Turtle Island Voices, originating in the Treaty 8 territory of British Columbia, created by Kelly Smith and hosted by Tansy Friendship Center Society. We asked 6 people to share their journey. We heard different voices, similar views, and saw experiences through a different lens.
I want to introduce Bev Lambert. Bev and I are of the same mind that when we share our lessons and some of our life's journey, we may be helping somebody else get through a difficult time. And I'd like to welcome you, Bev, and thank you for agreeing to come on.
Thank you, Sandra. Can I just take a moment, Kelly? I know that Sandra introduced me, but Sandra doesn't know everything about me. She just thinks she does. I am a resident of northeastern BC. I've been here all my life, bounced around between Prince George's and Northeast, but growing up, I bounced around between Prince George, Dawson Creek, Chetwynd, finally settled in Chetwynd in the early 70s when Sesame Street was born. So I've been here for a number of years, and then I left for a while. I lived in Fort St. John for a bit, and I just came back home the end of December. My family's here, my sons are here, my grandkids are here, and I spent a lot of time driving back and forth to visit family. So I'm back in my home neck of the woods, and I'm actually really glad to be back. It's been quite a journey for me. I just rolled over to another birthday just a couple of days ago, and in my time here on this earth, it's been quite a little bit of challenge and a lot of success and some great teachings, but I'm proudly sober, 31 years. I've decided to walk a good path for my kids many years ago. And with that, I think it's really been helpful because it took me back into my own culture and being proud of being a First Nations woman. And now many people refer to me as a matriarch. And at first I thought, I'm not a matriarch. I didn't believe that I was, but I think I'm getting there. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm a mother of 3 sons. Sadly, I had to let one go to go back home to create. I've got 6 grandkids, and I'm also a great grandmother. So I've got a lot of different things different roles that I play in life. But yeah, that's pretty much me. I'm trying to be short and sweet, but there's no such thing as sweet with me. So I'll leave it at that.
That's why I like you, Bev.
I'm not short and sweet.
Yeah, you're not short and sweet.
I'm long and sour.
We'll discuss that off the record. Why have you agreed to be interviewed? Why are you on this podcast?
I think it goes back to some things that Sandra shared and that I just shared too, that I'm finally in that place where I really believe it's important for the sharing to occur. I also believe that I have a responsibility as a matriarch, as a First Nations woman, as a woman that has changed her path for the better, to share a lot of the teachings that I was given. And I really do believe that's our responsibility as we move forward in life and go from children and teenagers and adults and start walking in the moccasins of an elder, that we have a responsibility to share our culture. And so when Sandra asked, I don't even think I was reluctant about it, partly because I always believe that Sandra would never put me in a place that is not good intentions, that she comes to me with a lot of respect. And there's a mutual respect that we have, and I'm quite thankful for that. So I just seen it as something that could be very valuable, not only for myself in the concept or process of sharing, but also to put it out to people to hear it, to read it, to see it.
You already shared that it's important to you that Indigenous people share their journey. But I want to ask, were you always proud to be First Nations or Indigenous, or what do you prefer to be called?
I don't know. That's a loaded question, because by virtue of the Indian Act, my grandmother lost her status. So we grew up Metis, and there was a rich culture with the Metis people and the Metis values. When I was 18, I married a First Nations man, and I walked into a little church in Moberly Lake, Metis, and I walked out status just by virtue of the Indian Act. And there was a lot of pushback from that, because how's she doing here? She doesn't even belong here, that kind of thing. But I struggle with that. I like the terminology First Nations, but I also believe that I have a heart of Métis. So I guess for me, the best, because I married an individual who's First Nations, it doesn't mean that my heart was never in the culture that I grew up with. And as it turns out now, my grandmother, all of her family are being reinstated just because of the many things, truth and reconciliation, and the challenges, the challenge that a few women put before the government of Canada in terms of the discrimination of the Indian Act. For me, the best way that I could identify myself as being Indigenous, because then I'm not pushing away from my Metis lineage and values, and I'm not pushing away from the First Nations because they're both so rich. They've given me so much. So yeah, I guess that would answer that question. Sandra, did you start by asking me, was I always proud to be Indian? Did you ask that? No, I wasn't. I could remember, and it was when I was a little girl and living in Prince George. Because Prince George, and I think you can appreciate this because I know that you reside in Prince George, but things have changed since back in the early 60s. But I remember being a little girl and all around me were Caucasian people, right? And we were referred to as little squaws. I remember running across to the store, and back then we could go get cigarettes and milk and bread for our parents without anybody calling Child Family Services because the store was just a kitty corner a block away. I ran to the store and I heard these two Caucasian women who called me, "Look at that little Indian girl. Look at that little squaw." And I just, even then, I think I might have been 5 years old. I felt the impact of it. And I think that's where the shame for me as an Indigenous person started, because it was the tone in which they referred to me as a little Indian girl. It wasn't nice. It was actually quite negative. And the little girl in me recognized it. And so I think that's where it's that's where it started for me, the shame and feeling lesser than and just sometimes embarrassment, right?
Oh, thank you, Bev.
Did I answer your question or did I answer too much?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Can you tell me when that started changing for you? When you started doing things about the shame that you felt inside of you?
It actually started for me when I sobered up, when I decided to sober up. I was 32 years old. And my kids, we always lived in Chetwynd. I think in the little community of Chetwynd, you're accepted. You're part of the community. But I also began to see, I joined, and I don't want to throw out names here, but there was an organization that I joined. Okay, I'll just say it. It was the Women's Resource Society. And I was excited to join it, but they began to bash a lot of men. And to me, that wasn't part of, because I was thirsting for my culture. I was thirsting to get to know who I was. But there's where I am now and back then, I really understand that there's a really important role that men and women play in our culture. But I also, when I sobered up, I began to see my own value and my own worth. So that's where it started changing. And it wasn't a really aggressive change. It was a change over time. Sobering up, getting back into the sweat lodge, getting back into ceremony, opening up to a life that I had not been really exposed to. Because in the 70s, I think growing up, most of our people were shame-based. I know my mother was very shame-based. I know my grandmother was, because I could remember they'd bake bannock and they'd hide it. Or we'd have moose meat and we were told never tell people that you're eating moose meat. So it was almost grounded, but I think it wasn't put on us as a rule, but there were little subtleties to growing up that kind of leaned towards the shame base. And so it was after I sobered up and became stronger in my own that I began to see the value that I had as a woman, as an Indigenous person, and as somebody that was worthy of having the other things that the very things that other people have.
If I could speak to that, as a kid in the 70s, we thought that Indian people were dangerous. We weren't supposed to hang out with the native kids. And it's not even that I remember being told these things or having these conversations in my family's home or amongst my friends. We just knew that there was this wedge. There was us and there was them. And we weren't supposed to be hanging out with those people. And it's really not that long ago, is it?
No, when I think about, you're absolutely right. I am much older than you. You don't have to remind me. Actually, you know what? It's pretty good aging. It's awesome aging, because with aging comes a lot of awareness and that connection to culture and my womanness and so many other beautiful things that I didn't have as a child. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It doesn't seem like that long ago. Also, in the grand scheme of things, it seems like a lifetime ago. So it's like a mix of both, because even back then in the 60s and 70s, the level that, and I'm going to be very honest, and I hope it's okay that as I go along, I share some of my personal story, because it's created who I am. But back then, the level in which parents drank with their kids, left the kids at home while they went out and drank, there was no pride in a home of dysfunction. There was no pride for being Indigenous in a home where there was alcoholism and promiscuity and drinking and violence and those kinds of things. And that's what I grew up with. And that's what brought my own change. Yeah, it's so in that respect, it's changed considerably. It's changed leaps and bounds, because we don't do that now. There's a greater awareness. And back then as well, the level of alcoholism to me was much more acceptable for pregnant women to drink and that kind of thing. And there were no counselors around the corner like we have now. You can connect with a counselor virtually. My mother didn't have that. My grandparents didn't have that. So we were left, I think, carrying wounds and trauma of our people, which also contributed to the shame and the lack of pride and all those other things that we as Indigenous people have felt over time, right?
Yes.
Did I stray way off?
No, not at all. No, this is really why we're doing this. There's a lot of things that can just happen organically in a conversation, and that's exactly where we need to be. So that's fine. Bev, did you start noticing a difference in your journey where after sobriety, did you notice a difference with your friends, family, positive, negative, maybe a little bit of both? How did the people around you react to your sobriety?
It's strange. I was so happy that I made that decision. I remember the moment. I remember the night. It was New Year's Eve. And I was so happy. And I was just on this, I don't even know how to relate to it. It was just so incredible for me that I made that decision. And then I had my friends going, well, what the heck? You don't have a problem. And I was sober for 2 years before I went into treatment. And I decided, even though I had grabbed the bull by the horns, I still had all this anger, and I still had the wounds, and I still had the trauma and the shame. There was a lot of shame. Even in how I dressed and my womanness, I would cover myself up. So I'm going out to treatment, and I'm happy. Yay, I'm doing this big, huge thing. But also the other side of it was, am I doing the right thing? I'm leaving my kids for 6 weeks. Is this crazy? But I also placed my feet back in the sweat lodge by that time. And I knew that what I was feeling, what I was experiencing internally was a disconnect to the beauty of the sweat lodge and ceremony, that there was some work that needed to be done. So I'm heading out to Poundmaker's Lodge in Edmonton, and I had family telling me, what are you going for? Why do you have to go? It was almost like they were trying to stop my path, because my path may have opened up some of their stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So yes, there were struggles, but on the other side of it, I knew waiting for me when I came home was a life that would be changed for me. It was already starting to change with sobriety, but I knew that with going to treatment, getting to know myself better, and letting go of a lot of the wounds that I had carried, and that's what treatment did for me. I got to let go of a lot of stuff, and I knew that waiting for me when I got home was the lodge, my culture, another chance with my boys, another opportunity to perhaps walk in a good way. So once again, and I think you're going to find that as I share, that it's almost there was this and there was this, but it's combined to make a lot of good life teachings for me. So Kelly, back to the question. When I started seeing a difference in my own perception.
Yeah. How were your kids impacted? How did you make these changes? You already touched on that. You got back into the sweat and you made time for pound makers despite all the sacrifices and having to leave your boys behind and stuff. So how did your boys react? Because I know people, even children, they get into a habit of things, and change for them isn't easy, whether it's good or not.
I had 3 sons, and my oldest seen the most of the impact of and I wasn't a go hard alcoholic. I drank on weekends. I curled, I played ball, I played fastball. So that was my social time. With it came a lot of drinking. So I was a weekend alcoholic. I wasn't every day. I couldn't binge. There was no way. But nonetheless, my oldest son seen the impacts of that because he was much older when I sobered up. And my youngest son, I think, was 7 at the time. And my oldest was 16. So he was already affected in the same way that I was affected by my mother's.
Right.
It was like this cycle had rolled over and wound down to that generation. But you know what? My youngest son became so successful in business. And he's got some really good grounding for his family because he watched a different mother. Whereas my 16-year-old was already ingrained and had affected his psyche and his wellness and his pride and everything else that I talk about. It affected him as well. Sadly, I lost him to drug addiction. And then on the other side, once again, my youngest son just became such an incredible, successful human being on a good life path still to this day. One of the proudest moments, and it was just a couple of years ago, I don't even know what the situation was, but we were talking about sobriety, and he said, I've never seen my mother hungover or drunk.
Wow.
And in the moment he said it, it just swelled my heart that I had that impact on him. Even now saying it tears me up because that was pride, like just pride all wound up into that moment when he said it. And I thought, wow, I could never ever hear my oldest son say that because he left this earth in 2006, heavily addicted and carrying a lot of wounds, right? So that's the impact that it had. But with sobriety and treatment became educated, and I just thirsted to learn more. Once I started letting go in treatment and writing letters to people that hurt, not writing letters to send to them, but as a process of healing.
Yeah. I
wanted to become more educated in that whole cycle of addiction and trauma in the family and that type of thing. And so, as I said, I went to Poundmaker's Lodge, and part of Poundmaker's Lodge was also the Nietzsche Institute for training. A few years later, I went in and I took all the Nietzsche courses. I was just thirsting. It's like my spirit was thirsting, not only from the healing that I experienced, but I just wanted to know more about how my family, the movements, and what happened over time to create this. And I'm still somewhat puzzled by it because Kelly, my family, and Sandra knows my family. And Ivan, I think you knew my late brother. I began to wonder why and look at all the different roles within a family system not from our culture, the education pieces that our Caucasian people have given to us in terms of education, and they were so beneficial to me. And back in the day, it was John Bradshaw and that kind of thing. But understanding the roles within a family system has really helped me to continue to walk a good path and walk towards that role of being a really good elder and matriarch.
I think that education comes as a kind of a double-edged sword. You have that insight, and then you have members of your family and friends that don't have that insight that makes you vulnerable as well.
That's one of the things I was going to say when I was saying that you both know my family. All of my family are still addicted. And I come from a family of 9, 6, and my mother. 6 of my siblings are now laying in their graves as a result of drugs and alcohol. And I say that without any shame. I say it truthfully. I say it from a perspective that I've seen over time through my education and my own awareness and my own pain and my own looking at things as they really are and not pulling that blind over them and hiding them. And that's sad and that's lonely to walk a path with this big, huge family that we're gifted into and with, to walk a path alone. And to feel so alone in wellness and culture. None of them came back to culture. None of them. And that's so sad because there's so much beauty in it. There's such an incredible amount of beauty in it. And to be honest, it was those people that judged me the most too. And what the hell are you getting? You think you're so good. Never ever thought I was good, but I thought I was good enough to do better for my kid.
Yeah.
Right?
It's hard when you speak from a perspective of, I don't want to say not healed, but healing has different levels. You're just on a different plane, not better at all. You've just walked the trail a little bit longer than maybe some of the others.
I think a lot of times too, when we see somebody going through that healing process or getting sober. It's almost a threat to us. I get it. Thank you, Bev.
I think with that, people think that if she's going to uncover something, she might also uncover something of mine. And I never ever threw anybody under the bus with that. I acknowledged the abuse in the family, but only from my perspective and my story. Right. And I think there was this great fear because in addition to me being full of shame and having no pride and low self-esteem and a lack of confidence and everything that comes with growing up in a family of dysfunction and loss of culture and loss of pride, my family members felt that too. Sandra, I think I shared this with you at one point that I was enraged with my mother. I didn't know my mother. And now at this point in my life, like she's been gone since 1981, I understand my mother more now as a result of my own healing than I did when she was alive and in my midst. So I had to go through my own path in order to understand her. And now I understand other people much better. I understand my sons much better. I even understand my addicted son much better than I did because that pain was so raw. And also there was shame with what have I done to him? What did my life path do to that young man?
I honor your story, Bev. Thank you for sharing, dealing with the shame and guilt that was put on us as Indigenous people. We were told that we were dirty, we were filthy. The whole intention was to kill us on the inside, kill our spirit. Our acknowledgement was a connection to the land. So as you become more aware of your connection to your Indigenous spirit, your Indigenous world, you get to see the difference and being able to share the difference. Where do you see your role as an elder and as a leader? Where do you see your role in your community?
To be honest, Ivan, there's been a lot of things happen in the last couple of years. There was some and I certainly don't want to make this a poor Bev thing, but there were some events of bullying and lateral violence. I was targeted and by people who claim to be these spiritual, strong, professional leaders. And because of my own upbringing, I struggled with that. I still struggle with it. But I come back to Chetwynd and I'm quite happy about that. But on the other side of it, I just don't feel that people look at me in value at all. My own nation, I don't think, partly because I don't belong, I'm married into it, yada, yada. But there's organizations in this town and all over. I have a lot to give. I know that. I can sit here and not doubt that. And I have no self-doubt when I say I have a lot to offer. However, there's organizations near me and around me that don't see that because I'm an honest person. I call things like I see it. But at the same time, my role in being an elder is such that being an elder is about being truthful and honest, first of all, to self, right? First of all, to self. And sharing the teachings that I received and sharing the gifts that I was given. And perhaps I've had to look at this, especially in the last little while, maybe I need to get a little more gentle because in my upbringing, in that home that I grew up in, I had to be tough. I was the middle child. I was the hero in the family that took care of everything. And sometimes I did it with a lot of, like I had to point them young kids in the right direction, the younger siblings, and maybe I need to become a little more gentle. But I certainly will not sacrifice my own value and walk a path that's a lie or bullshit just to have a job or to be involved. So I have to maintain and hold up my own truth and my own reconciliation. Because for me, reconciliation starts right here, in here. We can blow it out all over the place. The Truth and Reconciliation Report, we see it in school systems and education systems, healthcare systems. And to me, it's a facade, it's a lie. Because the reconciliation has to start right here. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's how I feel is that there's still little pangs of feeling unworthy. And maybe it's not even, it's me feeling unworthy, but perhaps it's not being understood by other people or other people not seeing the value. Because like I say, I won't tell a lie to have a job. I won't tell a lie to do this podcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I won't tell a lie to be involved. People don't understand the me, then I have to accept that.
So I hear you willing to compromise. These organizations, where's their compromise? Because it seems somewhat counterproductive to move forward with reconciliation if you are shutting out particular elders because of politics, could I say? Politics, internal politics. Hey, listeners, this is your host, Kelly Smith. If you're interested in joining an advisory committee that provides constructive criticism, feedback, and ideas for the content of Turtle Island Voices, we'd love to hear from you. Visit us at turtleislandvoices.ca/advise to learn more. So what should their compromise be? Or how might they compromise so that we can move forward?
Once again, I think that's $1 million question, Kelly. Because part of what I've come to realize is I've walked on my path. I'm still walking on my path. I will walk on my path until the day I die. I will walk sober. That's a decision that I've made. And with that came a lot of reconciliation, a lot of awareness, truth telling, looking internally, seeing my family. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, maybe it is unfortunately, a lot of people running organizations have not done that yet. I think there's many people that think I'm the president of this organization, or I'm the chair, or I'm the executive, whatever the case may be. With that comes a lot of grandiosity. In our culture, there is no room for grandiosity. So because you're a title, because you're this big wig, it doesn't mean that you've done your work. And I've come to recognize that. So where's the compromise? If people aren't willing to change their path, their own individual path, it will continue to be that way. It will continue to be that way. I see people, and it's not just here, it's all over, that have been involved in organizations that have violated women. They're misogynists, they're bullies. And we've seen many people outed in the last few years with sexual abuse allegations from the 70s and the 80s. But that's an opportunity for truth telling. That's an opportunity for reconciliation on both parts. So I can't even answer that. How do they compromise? How do they shift over to be open to people? We can't force anybody. We can't take anybody kicking and screaming into anything. We all know that. And that's part of awareness. And so with that, I think we have to just accept that that's just the way it's going to be. But there are many dynamics. I think that people still, we can see them. I can literally see some, and an elder told me that when I first started healing, you will see things that you have never, ever seen before. And I get what he means now is that it's not that you're going to become a prophet or a psychic. You're just you're going to see things in a way that you've never seen them before because you're healing. You're going to see the truths. But I really do believe that people, I can't shift that for anybody. I cannot shift that. Therefore, I have to accept it. And I know, and I still have to walk into tomorrow knowing that I am valuable. I'm a valuable human being. I'm valuable to my family, to my grandkids, to my great grandkids. I'm valuable to myself, and I have to get better at being valuable to my friends and to the world. I had a tough time in Fort St. John. I closed myself off. I think I got in a bit of depression. And I have an opportunity now to shift that over, but I can't do that for anybody. They have to do that. So those dynamics, those politics that come, that's part of strategic planning or team building. We need to look at those things. We need to have hard conversations and put it on the table, not in a way to harm or maim anybody sitting in our circle that's training, just to be honest. Because when we put those things on the table and we open up to them and we're honest about them, those are opportunities for change. So,
yeah.
I don't know if I answered, but that's the best I can do, Kelly.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
And I hope I get a gold star along the way here.
I'll give you a platinum one when we're done.
We'll find a gold star somewhere here.
We get enough people in leadership that have gone through the healing process or a little bit further down the healing path, then maybe that compromise will look a little bit different, or more people willing to compromise, right?
I think as an Indigenous individual, that's also part of my responsibility. To walk that path, if I've made a decision to walk sober, walk the path and how it comes. Sometimes it's a hard path. And Kelly, from my experiences last year, the crap I had to go through, but we have to walk it because that's what's been given to us. And so that's our responsibility. It's to be honest and forthright and just to continue to walk the path in spite of how difficult it is. There were times I wanted to give up. I honestly just wanted to, I don't know what I wanted to do because it was so hard. It was unbearable to carry the burden. But here I am today and I'm with my family. I'm talking to you folks. That's great. That's great. Yeah. That's what life is about.
That responsibility, sometimes you carry a big load, especially if you have integrity and share that honesty with people. Some people don't get it because they're not on that path, but it's still a responsibility to share. And sometimes people aren't ready to hear the truth, but we still have to be truthful to ourselves and to the people around us.
Thanks, Ivan.
I just want to say that you're modeling those changes, and you're right. We can't make anybody else get to that point where they meet you in the middle. That's their journey, and you're doing what you're doing, and you're on your journey. Their journey is totally different, and I think the best we can do is model our lessons and our journey, and you're doing that with grace and dignity, and I'm honored to know you.
Thanks, Sandra. So was there a particular event that was a catalyst for your change?
I think if we went to any recovering alcoholic or recovering addict, they would say yes, absolutely. For me, it was my brother's suicide. My brother's suicide in December 1990, when I just said no more. Because by that time, and there's a pretty big story attached to that, and I won't go into it, but by that time, he was serving time for something that happened to another family member. Yeah, it was a manslaughter charge. He ends up in jail, comes out, and he hung himself. So he committed suicide. Actually, he hung himself December the 11th. He didn't pass away until December 18th. And then that moment, in the moments that we were letting go at the hospital because he was brain dead on life support, we shut the machines off. I made that decision, no more. I can't continue to drink and I can't continue to live this life because that could be me next. There was so much pain, right? So that was December 1990, January 1st, 1991. Stroke of midnight at a New Year's dance, I said no more. And that was the last I ever drank. And I said to one of his sons just about a year ago, your father's death was my liberation. I said, I waited for you to grow up to be a man to share that with you. That's something so painful for you and for the family could be my freedom. And that opened the door to my sobriety and my wellness. So that's what the catalyst was. Family loss, a family of very traumatic family event to take me to that place.
Thanks, Bev. So what else do you do to raise awareness? We've been talking quite a lot about it. Besides coming on our podcast, do you have the opportunity to go into communities and do community engagement? I know you've been on councils before where you're able to share your information. What are you doing today?
What am I doing today? I'm absolutely, Kelly. I've been on the First Nations Health Council since 2014. And I remember walking into the boardroom and seeing all those people, and they were so smart. And I thought, what the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. I wanted to tuck my tail in between my legs, get back on the plane, and come back to Fort St. John. But I'm still there. And as a result of that, I've stood up and I've advocated for many things that I felt were not fair in our healthcare system because I represent the Northeast, particularly for the folks in the Northeast and in the communities of this area. And so I think I've become a really good advocate because I've seen things through different eyes. And I worked in the healthcare system, so I had the benefit of seeing it in that way, and then coming to the table and being able to make change or attempting to make change through advocacy. As a result of that, and it's not, I think, and I'm not bragging, I think I've always had good leadership skills. And I think that came from that upbringing where I said I had to be the hero. And if you understand family dynamics and the roles within families, that their different family members pick up different roles. And I became the one that took care of everybody. So that translated over to leadership as I got older. And I always found myself in these positions where there was leadership necessary. So when I came to the health council table, I think I just sharpened up more those skills. And so now I sit in partnership tables and regional tables, and I chair a lot of meetings. And so it's increased my abilities, but also looking at my leadership skills more on the governance piece of it, and also dealing with politics. Because when we say politics, it's not just, it's not, there's a lot of politics. There's the dirty politics that come with being in organizations as well. But sitting on the health council, what else do I do? For me, what I do to share is, and I've been called a lot in the last probably 5 years to share some of my cultural teachings. Probably an executive that's running a corporation, for me to say, you know what, I have great skills in moccasin making, they would poo-poo it away. But that's culture. That's when I'm called to share those skills, to me, that's leadership in my culture. That's cultural sharing and humility and safety and all those other things. When young people ask me, how do I say this in Cree? That executive might poo-poo that away, but to me, that it touches me in a way that there's pride in that. There's pride in that. A, somebody would want to learn, and B, that I'm able to support that in some way, right? So that, and like I say, language, culture, this podcast, as you said, Ivan brought it up earlier about walking towards that path into becoming an elder and a strong matriarch. This is it. This is part of it. And I'm sitting here and I have my moccasin making bag here. And I wanted to sit because I think when I'm sewing, it's like therapy, right? But that's who I am. And there's leadership in that too. To instruct a group of 20 women on how to make moccasins, to have somebody reach out to me and the Metis organization, we want you to teach ribbon skirts. There's beauty in that. There's beauty in that. For me, much more feel good than there is sitting at in a corporate boardroom blowing smoke up everybody's ass.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think that's the core, right? It's the youth and the community coming to you, or the friendship center and the community coming to you and asking you how to say a word in Cree is more important than how many seats you can fill in the auditorium.
One of the big parts of reconciliation with herself is reclaiming that place of reclamation, with inside of herself and also community.
There was just a couple of things as Ivan was speaking, but I forgot to add that in my 63 years on this earth, I'm certified in addictions counseling, and I'm a certified life skills coach. And in everything that I've done, from sitting in corporate boardrooms, flying back and forth to Vancouver, sitting amongst the PhDs, which to me is just, all that means is that it's just piled high and deeper. Truthfully, in my opinion, the most rewarding things that I've ever done was work in addictions. To have the downtrodden come into my office at the end of their hope and see the change take place, that has always been the most rewarding thing that I've ever done in my life. That and life skills coaching, when you can see people open a door to what they want to change, to see and fling it wide open with the right tools and the right skills that we can give them. And of course, it's not about hand-holding or enabling people. It's about giving them gifts and skills to walk their own path. So that is part of leadership too, that has been so fulfilling to me.
Thanks, Bev. What do you see as an uphill battle in raising awareness, cultural awareness?
I think it's some of the things we already talked about, that there's movers and shakers in every community. There's movers and shakers, and we can put it in the context of chief and council. We can put it in the context of an organizational governance table, whatever, First Nations Health, whatever the case may be. There's movers and shakers and that high level leadership everywhere. That's the uphill battle. And it goes back to what we were talking about, that unless people make their own change, it's always going to be, we're never going to be on the same wavelength. Kelly, you and I will never be, Sandra and I will never be. And that's part of that acceptance and knowing that. But the uphill battle in our path as Indigenous people is the change makers aren't always willing to make change for the people they represent. Right. The change is for them and them only. And that's because, sadly, our people have been influenced by many things not of us. Greed, politics, power, control. The things that come with alcoholism and drug addiction, our people have adopted, and carried as their own value system. That's not of us. That's not of the lodge. That's not of ceremony. And I think we're never going to go back to the way we lived as traditionally 100 years ago. Never. So the challenge is to continue to walk in a good way, but also know that, like, that's the struggle. That's the struggle, is we cannot change the people that get in those positions that could be real makers and perhaps don't want to be, because you know what, I'm making a good wage and I can just dilly-dally and do what I need to do,
Right.
because I'm still making a good wage. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I think it does, Bev. Thank you. There's so much of it that's an uphill battle, right? So it's pretty hard to articulate any one particular thing. So what do you say to the Indigenous person that has no interest in their culture?
There's not really much you can say. Not really much you can say. I would continue to be who I am and value what I have. And I've said it at tables. I've done it at tables. But there's really not much you can... we all have an opportunity to state our opinion at some point in a conversation, in a podcast, in a gathering, whatever the case may be. But it's up to that individual to pick it up and embrace it if they want. And once again, we can't take people kicking and screaming. And I guess just recognizing that I shared that when I was younger, I didn't know my culture. I was ashamed of who I was. And it took me some painful experiences growing up to know that I wanted better for myself. I didn't want that. So I had to go through, and we just talked about what was the catalyst that changed. People have to have their own catalyst. You asked, why can't the catalyst come through a good thing? I think when good things are happening for people, they don't want change. They want to keep it in that nice, warm, fluffy. So they continue. And sometimes it's a facade too. I don't know, in my opinion. But I think until people get to their own fork in the road, their own trauma event, their own whatever it is that is plunked before them in their life path, we can't change that. So I too didn't understand culture, but now I will never have it any other way. And it took a lifetime of many negative experiences. And I'm not perfect by no means. There is still so much that I have to learn. There's still so much. There's every day I will do something where I will hold it. And I hurt. When I'm being hurt, I hurt. I was bullied so badly by a misogynist, a high-level guy. And it took me to a really dark place. But I think it took me about a year to say, you know what, not every guy is like that. That's him. Not every man is like that. And then when it starts shifting you back to rotten, stinking thinking, and I still do it. I call them down all the time, and I have to sometimes stop myself. But sometimes it's fun to put them down too.
You try not to let those people fill too much real estate in your head.
Because he's a dink.
Yep. So, Bev, how do you see cultural and historical awareness like 5 years down the road? And even the changes in 2021 with the Kamloops band announcing the unmarked graves from the residential school. I know as a Caucasian person, I saw a lot of difference in other Caucasians around me and in some of the Indigenous people that were around me too. I think awareness has changed dramatically, even just in the past year. What does it look like 5 years down the road, cultural and historical awareness?
If it's anything like the 5 years ago, I see us moving forward. I really do. But I think, once again, those catalysts, right? Kamloops Indian Residential School, and that's not even over. There's still findings all across Canada, right? So Orange Shirt Day, things, and this isn't Indigenous, but anti-bullying, the Pink Shirt Day. There's so much awareness around us, awareness about a very dark history. But 5 years ago, we didn't know about that. And I think it's going to take us to this place of opportunities for healing and calling government to accountability, calling churches to accountability. Because the truth is, it wasn't just, in my opinion anyway, in my truth, it wasn't just the Catholic Church. There were many churches, United Church and Anglican, so many others. I think that if I could peer ahead in 5 years, I think we're going to find that our people are going to get stronger. There's going to be opportunities for healing, should they so choose. Once again, can't take them over there by their ear into healing But I think the opportunities are going to present themselves. And I think it's going to be a good time for people to exercise those rights at opportune times. And I can see myself getting better. I'm just getting better at being an Indigenous woman, at being a good elder, at being a good matriarch, because doors that were open, that were dark and hard and sad and terrifying and traumatic. Without those things, I don't think that we could go ahead. And also having our voices back. I have no shame in saying that there are organizations that are very dysfunctional. I have absolutely no shame in that. Now, is there going to be a black mark against me? There might be. But I've said what I need to say. And that truth telling is so important. And I think there's going to be opportunity as we move forward for more truth telling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too that when one person speaks their truth, it gives other people the opportunity and the courage to be able to speak their truth. So you're by no means the only person that thinks the way that you think. You just may be the only person that's voicing it right now. And when we put this podcast out there, and that's part of our goal, is to let people know that you're not the only one that thinks a certain way. If you have a truth to speak, we welcome it.
I also want to say something. So when I look at cultural humility and cultural safety, those are those catchphrases now. I sit on as I said, the health board, and everybody wants to toss around the terminology that would indicate that I am really being culturally safe and cultural. Whatever. You're not. Don't say that you are. At the college that I used to work at, they started rolling out indigenization. Called all the staff, and of course, Caucasian staff were calling in sick, and I've got a class I got to go to, and that kind of thing. Do we force people? No, we can't. But the opportunity was there, and if you want to learn, it's there. A lot of people opted out. They started rolling out indigenization with a Caucasian man who had a PhD, and he had all these degrees. I went to my boss and I said, the first thing in indigenization is accessing your Indigenous resources. They're all around you. We're in the Treaty 8 area. Everywhere you look, there's an elder or a language speaker. You don't have to look too far. And because somebody has a PhD and they've got a staff this high of degrees, that doesn't mean that they know our culture, that they know anything about indigenization. So that's the first, by rolling it out, starting it that way, they made the biggest mistake. So I would say the same to anything else. If we're going to have cultural programming, access your cultural resources because they're all around you. We don't have to look too far for that. People that have done their healing and walked their good path. And last year I was offended when somebody said to me, "You're not a matriarch." And I went, okay, I guess in your opinion. But so, yeah, I just think that's a mistake that is made often, is that we're going to say cultural safety and cultural humility and cultural competency, but it's going to be driven and led by settlers or non-Indigenous people.
Past practice still ruling, basically.
Yeah. And let's stop it already.
I wanted to touch on that. When they discovered those unmarked graves in Kamloops, I think I had this conversation with Bev and separately with Kelly. For me, it just reaffirmed some of what I had been living. And when you just talked about it, Bev, I think right now people are actually looking to people with life experience to get educated on Indigenous issues, because a lot of the PhDs and the letters behind the names and so on and so forth are created by the institution that created the issues. I'm on the same page as you, Bev. I think we're going to see more grassroots folks popping up. We're going to see more peer supports popping up. I think we're at a crucial time in history when we have the ability to share some of our teachings and our lessons and our journey. So thank you, Bev.
So, Bev, I was thinking about having you on the podcast, and that's where this question came from, because when I ask you what's something everyone is thinking and nobody's saying, I know you're going to have an answer for me. Looking back over the theme for this season, what's our journey overcoming and raising awareness? So straight to the point, what is something everyone's thinking and nobody's saying?
Bullshit.
Is that a full sentence?
Because I peeked, I thought, how could I say that in Cree? How could I say where nobody would really know what I'm saying? In what aspect, though? In what context? Like, with what are you referring to? Because there's many things that come to mind with that. It just depends on the context and the situation, what it is.
The Truth and Reconciliation.
Okay, so to me, Truth and Reconciliation, it has great intention. However, once again, so we have this intention, it's supported. Is it supported by our federal leaders? I don't think so.
Or their hands may be forced.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then political leadership changes. Does it change? Does it improve? No. So that's why I say bullshit, right? That's why I say BS. So we have Truth and Reconciliation. We have these calls to action. We have the murdered and missing Indigenous women, calls to action. We have the Kamloops story, the 215, which are now 7,000. There are no calls to action, but there will be. Things are coming, but people aren't doing it.
Right.
People are not fulfilling their obligation as leaders as it starts trickling down from the feds to the province, to the organizations, to the bands. People are not fulfilling their obligation. It begins to get watered down. And that's a huge disservice to the families of the murdered and missing Indigenous women. I'm one of them. My sister was murdered, and I get treated like a piece of bleep from the regional coordinator because she doesn't see eye to eye with me. That's fine. I know the truth about my sister, right? So we have an accountability responsibility to the families of murdered and missing Indigenous women, to the families of the residential school, the day schools, and now there's the 60s school, and every individual in Canada has responsibility to fulfill those obligations. And for whatever reason, it's like the caribou thing. People all of a sudden begin to make it a big fight. It's a big, and then racism. Then we begin to see, okay, maybe you're not the person I thought you were. Maybe you are a little bit racist.
Yeah.
And we see it, and I'm going to use right now, like the COVID-19. It's put people in this place of this or that. Well, why does it have to be that way? Let's just do what we have to do as people. So yeah, with reconciliation, it's a wonderful intention, but we're not fulfilling it, the obligation as people.
Right.
And I say that even about our own people. I don't say it in any shade of disrespect whatsoever. Our people, because there's been, and we talked about residential school, many of our people have been traumatized and are carrying wounds from a history that was so dark. Many of our people who are now in leadership have families who were murdered and missing women. Leadership, our own people have been traumatized and they haven't yet dealt with their own stuff. And as a result, it stops people, I think, from fulfilling obligations as a human being on this planet Earth, in this place that we call home in Canada, Turtle Island.
In the space with other human beings.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I think it goes back to part of the uphill battle. For anyone listening, do you have a parting message?
How much time do you have?
More time.
My parting message, I guess, and I'm going to try and be gentle. I don't want to shove this down anybody's throat. I think it's really important. I talked a few times about responsibility and obligation, right? As an Indigenous woman, I have obligations. I have obligations to myself, to my family, to my community, to the world around me. I think we have to fulfill what Creator put in store for us. Pematsuan, our life, that's our life in Cree is Pematsuan, right? To take care of it. And sometimes that means looking at a hard, a difficult thing, a terrible memory, peeking into a broken path, walking. And I said it after my brother died last year. I love the road that I was given, this path that Creator put before me. been a broken road, but it's my road and I have to walk it. So I guess that's what I would part with. You know, the road that we've been placed on, that's our road. We have accountability, we have responsibility, because we can't just buckle down and give it up. We can. Talking about suicide, we can't
Right.
just walk away from it, because then we leave other people wounded and traumatized, right? So the road, regardless of how hard it is and how difficult it is and how challenging it is, we have to walk it. Take care of ourselves. Look after our life. That's it.
Thanks, Bev. Thank you for tuning in to Turtle Island Voices. For those of you who may be triggered by the information shared, please call the toll-free First Nations and Inuit Hope for Wellness helpline at 1-855-242-3310 or the Metis crisis line at 1-833-638-4722. You can find us at turtleislandvoices.ca, where our show notes provide more information from each episode. Please follow us on social media.